Yeah, thanks very much. Plastics have been brought up a few times already today. I guess I'm looking at it at the view from the Henry Royce Institute, as well as our new Sustainable Materials Innovation Hub. Next slide. When we think about this, we recognize that the plastics challenge is necessarily interdisciplinary. And this is because these challenges might look simple, but actually they're really quite complex. And that complexity is showcased by just a simple package of meat, where we first have to look at why the plastics are there in the first place. And of course, they're there to improve shelf life. So to prevent food waste, which is going to decrease our carbon footprint, as well as to improve food safety and prevent us from getting sick and not dying. So those are great things. Those are things we have to continue to do and are the minimum standards that we have to meet when we're thinking about any alternative material. But of course, the reality for a materials scientist or someone who works in plastics is that this actually is not one thing. And so if we wanted to keep those plastics but treat them better at end of life, then we have to have a different discussion around the plastic tray. The plastic film that goes over top of that package of meat is actually probably 5 or more layers of different individual plastics that are each a micron thick. And of course, we've got some plastic heat seals that connect them together. Our paper label likely also has plastic in it, and it certainly has an adhesive to stick it onto our package. And underneath that meat might be an adsorbent plastic mesh. And so we as material scientists can go and design something to do with it at end of life. But of course, we have to understand that the society interacting with it is going to do different things. So we might be able to get someone to rinse out a tray and put it in the recycling bin, but absolutely no one is going to wring out a mesh soaked in meat juice and put it into the recycling bin. So the design has to be driven by practice, and so we have to have an understanding of social practice in order to design things at end of life. Next slide. So what is a sustainable plastic? Well, I think our argument is that sustainable plastics don't really exist. We have to recognize that these plastics, or what we say is polymers, hold massive societal value. We can see those in the surgical room earlier. We can see those in lots of different environments. And pretty much across the board right now, if we look at an alternative, it actually is going to produce more waste and more carbon dioxide. And so the challenge is that we have to optimize this individually, but we have to shift towards using them and caring for them better. So doing away with this waste demonization and actually saying, well, these are valuable materials, how do we recover them? And of course, we have a hierarchy where we want to be able to reuse, and if we can't reuse, recycle, and if we can't reuse, degrade, and if we can't degrade, then we can pyrolyze. And so really it's shifting away from the narrative of plastics-free world and actually recovering value from plastics. And you do this to the creation of a sustainable system. Next slide. So what does that system need to do? Well, I think it has to have, oh, can you just go back there? You shifted to forward there, okay? We have to have past tense terminology. And so what we have as a goal of this system is to ensure that things are recycled, composted, or biodegraded. So it doesn't matter if something is recyclable if it is not recycled. So how do we do that? Next slide. So we have to do that by bringing together interdisciplinary communities, which we do at the University of Manchester. The first one, which has been mentioned by a few people today, was this Rethinking Resources and Recycling community that brought in people from Mary and HRI and Tyndall and SCI to try and look at these holistic solutions. And I'll talk about one of the outputs of that on the next slide. And then the second is our new Sustainable Materials Innovation Hub, which translates our interdisciplinary work from an internal perspective to try and deliver that in an external perspective. And so this is underpinned by a £10 million grant with the European Regional Development Fund. That is a new facility that should be opening up next month in the Henry Royce Institute. Next slide. And that sort of is showcased by one of our projects, which is called One Bin to Rule Them All. And this is in collaboration with Helen Holmes from SCI and Maria Sharmina from Tyndall, as well as with partners from across the supply chain. And so really we view these challenges as things that have to be very much at the interface between academia and industry. And so in this project, we're looking at how you can valorize plastic waste by systemizing the decisions that you're making. And of course, this can't be us that are doing it. It has to be partners across the supply chain that are working together to do that. And this is underpinned by about $1.5 million worth of funding, and is complemented by projects that we run with the University of Liverpool. And next slide, I think that might be it for me. So I wanted to save time there. So hopefully I recovered a little bit.